Hey everyone, I'm going to be doing this video on how to build a 10 by 12 shed. And I hope to have everything in this video, like exactly what you need to buy for supplies, the whole list, and measurements as I go along and everything. So hopefully at the end of this video, you'll be able to just buy your stuff and build the thing yourself. Hopefully. And you might ask, like, why don't I just buy like one of those Home Depot, Lowe's kind of sheds? Well, it's because I've looked at them before. Now, I'm not a builder. I'm just a regular guy that builds a lot. And so I just go look at those things, and they have like 2x4 floors. They have 2x4 rafters, the walls, everything spaced 2 foot apart. So to me, it's like, those are, really meant for an area where there's, pretty mild weather. So, if I lived in like California, Arizona, somewhere like that where, sure, I could use one of those sheds, it'd be fine. But up here, I have a lot of snow. Those things are not going to be all right here. So that's why I'm building my own. Those are just kind of hokey. I'm really kind of surprised at all the people on the internet that are like, oh, I moved into my Home Depot shed, converted it into a house, but it's like, but those aren't tiny houses. They're built really cheesy. And so hopefully these people put a few more boards in there before they converted it to a house. But that's my take on it anyways. I want to build, something decent that's going to last a while. And I just got my Home Depot order today. Look at this. This is my... Right here is the kit right here, all delivered in a nice package. So this should be enough for building the whole thing, except for maybe some, I still got to get windows, doors, some kind of roofing material, and some soffit and fascia material. But otherwise, this should take care of everything. So I'm going to get ready to start plugging away on this build. When I was having this stuff delivered today, it wouldn't actually make it through these trees right here because he had 12-foot pieces on there. So this is as close as I can get the wood. So I'm going to have to move all this stuff over, but realistically, it's like Murphy's Law. It's always going to be the bottom pieces that I need first anyways, right? So I'm going to need to dismantle this whole thing anyways to get to these bottom pieces to start my floor. So I'm going to cut this in right away. This is the list of materials you're going to need to buy and the cost of this shed right here. So I got this wood, the 2x4s unstacked and restacked, and I went through them, and boy, about a third of them were pretty bad. Usually I'm happy with what kind of wood they bring me, but this time is pretty bad, and so it's like a 3-hour trip to Home Depot to bring this stuff back. So it's kind of a bummer, but here's some of the warp issues in this wood if you're picking it out yourself. Like this kind of warp you can kind of deal with, if it's bowed like that, because you can always use that piece on a top plate or bottom plate and it'll kind of go back in shape. But I mean, if you got like pieces that are warped like this one, where if it's on edge it's just, totally bowed out and warped like that, I mean, that piece is really kind of unusable. So there's about 7 of them in that stack of 70. So about 10% of them are pretty warped bad. So I mean, all you can do with these pieces is really use them for short pieces. So if you got like a 2-foot piece underneath a window or something like that, you can use a piece like that, but there's only so many short pieces you need, so we'll have to see. So the first thing that I'm going to be building is the skids. These big pieces right here, skids or beams, whatever you want to call them. But that's what I'm going to be putting my floor on top of. And if you're like, oh, those are pretty big, they are. They're 2x8s. And the thing is, when you build outside, anything closer than 8 inches to the ground is really supposed to be pressure treated. And I don't want my floor to be moldy or rotten out over time. So I always put it on these because these are 2x8s. So it's getting everything 7.5 inches off the ground. Which is close enough to 8. And so, you know, and the thing is, if your beams rot out over time, your floor is going to be fine above it. So you can always, like, just, you know, replace your beams underneath, and your shed's all good. So that is why I'm building these beams first. So one of the pieces they gave me was totally split. I had to actually use a nail gun to nail it back together to even use the thing. But like I said, I'm a long way from a store to take it back. And you should measure these things first because a lot of the pieces were not even 8 foot long. So, you know, it's kind of bizarre getting wood that's, you know, it's like an 1/8 inch short because most of your measurements are based on 8 foot, right? But, so to build these, I took a 8 foot piece, and then that piece right there is 4 foot minus a 1/2 inch, so 3 feet 11.5 inches, and then you just alternate your joints there. And I use 3-inch nails to nail this thing together. 3-inch, so I put squeeze two together. Use 3-inch nails on both sides, and then put that third piece on and nail that together. So when I was making these, I actually put 4x4s down so I'd have a flat surface. And then when I stacked my 2x8s on there, I made sure the bottom was flat. And then at the end, I flipped the whole thing over so my top is flat and my bottom isn't so flat. So you'll find these pieces aren't really always the same width, so it's kind of hard to make them even on both sides, and you'll probably have to use some shims. A lot of times I just put some concrete blocks, you know, buried even with the earth right there to support these. But these, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to actually put 4x4 posts 2 foot in the ground and concrete them in as kind of a foundation so this thing doesn't move in the wintertime. Oh, and I didn't cut these things exactly to 12 foot. I want them just a little bit short, maybe 1/4 inch on both sides, maybe 1/2 inch, just so they don't stick out farther than the flooring, because at the end I'm going to put some skirting around to cover that up, and if they stick out then the skirting doesn't sit flush. So I don't want these beams to stick out too far. I'd rather them be a little bit short. And I also now need to level out this ground, so that I'm going to put a level on it, make sure that's level going across, and then I'll lay a board going across these two, and then make sure those are level too. So it'll probably take a lot of time just trying to get everything level with each other before I start getting my 4x4 posts in here. So for this foundation, I used two 4x4x8s, and I cut them into 6 32-inch pieces. And then I took those pieces, I put some nails halfway in the bottom just to give it a little more grip in there. And then I dug 2-foot holes. I put the posts in there, and then I screwed the posts here. I screwed it using these 6-inch screws. Screwed this into this, and so now it's looking pretty good. So hopefully you really don't need a foundation. So if you don't have any snow issues, wind issues, you don't care if this thing moves a little bit, you're not going to drywall it, then you really don't even need that. But for me, I wanted that extra support. So anyways, that's all done, and now I'm ready to start working on the floor. And I got my plans all printed out here for the floor. What I need here is I need, for the outside edge, these are 11-foot 9-inch pieces. The outer edges right here are 10 foot exactly, and these inner pieces are 9 foot 9 inches. So I need 8 of those 9 foot 8-inch pieces, or 9 foot 9-inch pieces first. Hey, so I got done cutting all my pieces here. I'm using 2x8s for my floor joists, and if you're wondering like what size of wood you should use, there's this thing called a span calculator, and you can calculate, you know, how far you can span, you know, 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, depending on your spacing and how much weight you're going to put in here. I might put a lot of weight in the shed, so I'm using 2x8s. Now for a 2x8, 8x12 shed, I'd probably use 2x6 floors, but anything wider than 8 foot, I'd use 2x8s. And for my house over here that I built, you should watch my house video, but I built that house, and it's got, it spans 12 feet, and it can actually, a 2x8 would have worked fine, but for that, my house, I needed a lot of insulation in the floor, so I had to use 2x10s just to fit all the insulation. So you can calculate what you need, but you could probably get by with 2x6 floor on this, but like I said, I'm probably going to put a lot of weight in it. Alright, so I have my measurements right here that I'm going to be using, and these are the same in both directions. So my first measurement here is 1 foot, 1 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. So, see here on here, try to do this left-handed for one here. So that would be 13 3/4 inches. So, right there. And then we're going to go over 1.5 inches for this the floor joist. So there would be 1 inch. Oops. 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So we do another line right there. And so that's our first one. And then of course I'm going to use this, make my lines on here, and you put an X here so you know that's where it goes. And so I'm going to get along marking out all my lines for my floor joists. And usually I'll measure one of these out, and then I'll measure the other one again, and then I put the two next to each other and make sure all the lines line up. So I measured twice. Alright, that was pretty smooth. I got my floor joists all done. I put these together and I measured diagonal both ways to make sure it was all square. And what I found out was, like, I got that square, but my beams, skids, were not square. So I unscrewed them from the post, I bumped them over and screwed them back in. So yeah, they're all good to go now. And then you should check and make sure everything's level before you continue on. I was putting these Simpson ties right here in just to hold this floor frame down to the beams here, which again are, you know, concreted in. I didn't nail that very well, huh? But it did turn out nice. But one thing is, this is going to be a shed, and so I didn't use joist hangers. Like most of the time, like if you're building a house or something bigger, you would use joist hangers. And if you did use joist hangers, you know, they would kind of interfere with this beam under here, so you'd have to move your beam over so you'd have room for all that, for the joist hangers in there. But like I said, this is just going to be a shed, so I'm not messing with that on this one. And besides, everything is like super supported resting on this beam anyways. So yeah, it looks good. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to get my 3/4 inch flooring material from there over to here. So I think I'm just going to be dragging them over. Those things are super heavy. So if you're working by yourself and you got to drag things because you can't lift them, this actually worked really well. And so I think my mind likes challenges, like how am I going to get them boards over there, you know, and trying to figure out a way. So if there's a will, there's a way. So before I put this flooring stuff in, I put a little blocking in this floor. This is called blocking. You're actually supposed to do that about every 6 feet. So, I mean, if it was a 8x12 shed, 8 foot wide, I wouldn't worry about blocking, but 10-foot span's pretty far. So I have my blocking in there. It really does make it a lot sturdier. And like when I designed my house over here, the engineer looked at it and he put blocking in the floor, in the walls, and the rafters, so everything had blocking for support. And something on nailing, I'm using this right here, this framing nail gun. Pretty massive, huh? But I got this thing from Harbor Freight. It was really pretty cheap, you know, $100 on sale or something a couple years ago. So, and I built my whole house with this thing. So, I mean, I think Harbor Freight stuff is just fine, you know. Depends what you want. If you're like a professional contractor, probably not. But, you know, if you're just doing projects here and there, I mean, that works great. And so the kind of nails I'm using, if I'm making a beam and I'm putting two 2x4s, 2x8s, whatever together, I use 3-inch nails because then they won't come out the other side. Pretty much for everything else, like the floor joists, the walls, the rafters, I'm going to use 3¼ inch nails. So that's what I'm using for nails. Hey, and measure the middle part when you're done with your blocking, because I found out I measured it and I was a 1/2 inch too big, so I stretched them out 1/2 inch, so I had to bust out one of these and make a shorter one. So measure your middle section here after you're done with blocking. Sweet, so the floor is all done. This is a 3/4 inch OSB I used, or it's really 23/30 seconds. I don't know what the heck that is, but so it's all done. The best thing to do is to actually glue and screw this stuff down. But I do the same thing as always. I'm like, whew, I'm in a hurry to do it, so I just grab my nail gun with 2½, 3-inch nails and pow, 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 pow. You know, usually I use 2½ and I ran out and used 3, but that's usually what I do. But then later on I'll want to put in a laminate floor and it'll be squeaking, and then I'll have to go through and screw it in anyways. So anyways, that's the best thing to do on that. You know, another thing, I'm just building this as a shed. That's why I'm just kind of in a hurry to get this done. And so if you were building this for more of a structure, like to, you know, kind of a living kind of thing, you would definitely put 2 of these joists, floor joists, together on the outside. I only used 1 because this is a shed, but really you'd use 2 of them together. You know, one thing on this flooring I didn't really even think about. I cut these pieces. I got 4 pieces, thinking this last piece I put on here was 2 foot wide, so I could just cut 1 piece and it would work for the whole thing. But I didn't think about the tab, and so when I cut it in half, you know, half of this has a tab on it and the other half, or the last 4 feet, doesn't. I didn't really think about the tab thing. It doesn't really matter too much, but you know, if you were worried about it, you would you know, put blocking in here underneath these edges. But I'm not worried about it. I mean, this is 3/4 inch stuff, and I've got 16-inch spacing on everything, so I really don't need it. Right on, I can start building my walls now. And so I like to build a couple of pieces first. I like to get the headers all set, and then get my window and door kind of pieces all set. So on like a window, you can see there's this outer normal size stud, which I'm using 7 feet 3 inches, and then the next one over here supports the header, and so that one's a little bit shorter, and then this final piece right here supports the window ledge. So I like to take these 3 pieces and nail those together ahead of time. Same with the door. I'll get these 2 pieces nailed together. And then with your headers, you want your headers to line up with your 2x4s if you can. So I'm using 2x6s here for headers, and so I'm putting some 1/2 inch spacing pieces in here, and then I'll put this one on and then nail those together. And so then at the end they're going to be, flush with the 2x4 walls. So anyways, I'm going to use 3-inch nails to nail those together. I'm using 2x6 headers for everything. You might be able to get by with 2x4 headers, but I mean, I just roll that way. I'm going to do everything with 2x6 headers just to make things easier in my mind. Alright, so it's all going to be easier doing this framing since I already now have all my windows and stuff set. And this is what it looks like after I put it together there. So there's the header. You can see it's being supported by that one. And here's the support for the bottom of the window. So that's what it looks like. Right on. Yesterday I just cut a lot of wood, so I got a lot of my studs cut, a couple of my top and bottom plates, so I'm ready to start putting together these walls. Something I was going to say, like when I put together these pieces, I try to make them, flush on the top, so when I lift them up, the outside wall is going to be, nice, straight and flush, so it'll be easier for putting on the siding. And if it's a little off in the inside, it really doesn't matter. You're just gonna drywall it and mud it anyways, so if even that, so it really does. I like the nice edges to be on the outside. So for the front and back walls on this, I always put two 2x4s or 2x6s together for the corner. It's just because when you're nailing your corners, it seems like you can never get your nail gun in, straight, and you're always nailing at an angle on the corners. And so if you only have one 2x4, you're gonna have all these nails shooting out. So that's why I put 2 of them together. If you put 3 together, then you'll have something on the inside to screw your drywall to. So sometimes if you're going to drywall it, sometimes it's good just to put 3 of them together. And I'm also going to just take these 2 and I'm going to nail them together ahead of time, just like I did the window pieces. Oh, and I'm going to do this front wall first, and I'm going to mark out my top and bottom plates where I want the studs to be, and then I'm just gonna start nailing it together. Well, that wasn't so bad putting up this wall. I had to put it on some blocks to get it off the ground, and that made it a lot easier to lift up. It was pretty heavy, but not crazy heavy. Something to remember if you're ever changing these windows around. The important measurements really are from this edge, and you measure over and make sure at 4 foot you have something to nail to. So this is the one actually at the 4 foot mark. So you need to make sure, every 4 feet you have something to nail your siding to. Oh, and I had to put this brace in the doorway here to help stabilize it, and I also needed to put a brace at the top up there because when you lift it, it kind of bends right where that seam is. So, but other than that, these are, the outside ones right here are to keep this wall from falling over. And then I have these these inside ones, handy dandy ones that I just screw to the floor and to the side, and it keeps it pretty sturdy. All right, another wall done. Hey, and one thing to watch out for when you're using these nailers, keep your hands like way far back, because sometimes the nail is going to hit like some knot or something weird in there, and the nails just go wonky. Like this thing's like phew, came sticking out, and so did this one over here. So I know I didn't shoot at that much of an angle, so you just got to keep your hands back. But nail guns are really the way to go. It makes it so much faster. And really, I'm no expert at all. I make all kinds of mistakes. That's why I measure those plates both separately, because twice already, I mean, I made a mistake, and once I line them up, I'm like, what? And so, you know, working outside in the sun, you get tired and you make mistakes easy. So I always measure twice, and I, you know, a couple times I nailed my my wall to the floor. You know, my angle wasn't very good on the gun, and so I got too close. So I mean, I make mistakes all the time, but you just gotta keep plugging away. Well, that was pretty tight fit with this wall, but what I did was I unfastened this side wall and I bumped it out just a little bit, and then this corner stud right here, I kind of bent it in and I screwed it in. So now I'm just gonna unscrew that and put it back straight, but I was just trying to give myself a little room to get that thing up because it's pretty tight fit. But it's all ready to go. Now I'm gonna just go around, make sure everything's exactly where I want it, make sure everything's level and square and all that stuff, and then you know, I'll probably start nailing it down to the floor and nailing these corners up. Oh, and since there were so many bad pieces, I really don't have enough now to do that the top plate up there, which connects everything in together. So I need one more layer of 2x4s up there. Right on. I got the top plate on, and I got everything nailed together, the sides of the floor. So everything's ready for siding now. You know, I really should have got this first wall really square before I put everything up, because I mean it was level going in and out, but the wall wasn't square. I needed to push the whole top over to get it more square. So that was kind of a pain after I already had everything kind of up there. The correct thing probably to do is, you know, when you have the wall on the ground, to measure diagonal and get it all square, and then put a brace, you know, against the whole wall, against all the studs, screw it in there, and then it would stay square. But I don't roll that way. I just throw up the walls and then push them over. You know, if you're watching me and I'm using my framing nailer and I nail away, and then I get out my hammer and I go back and I hammer in some nails, it's because I don't want to overdrive the nails. So I'd rather underdrive them than overdrive them. So I drive them in. Sometimes they don't go in far enough and I use my hammer. And sometimes I try to get the plastic off, so when you're using a nailer, it leaves all these little plastic pieces. So I want them to sit flush, so I get those things off. And today I'm starting to work on the siding. Hopefully I can get this siding all up today, maybe today. So all I'm doing is I'm measuring down 8 feet, and then I put in these little, you know, blocks right there, just screwed them in. And then I can just set this piece up there and see if it fits right, how much I need to cut off the end. One thing about this stuff, this is actually, it's LP Smart Siding. But this is the shed kind. There's actually 2 kinds of this stuff, and this is the cheaper stuff. It's like $40 a sheet, but it's not really rated for anything. It's just for sheds. And then they got another kind that's a little bit thicker than this. It's $60 a sheet, but I think that's rated for 1/2-inch sheathing. So I mean, really, if you're like, this was, you know, to be occupied as a house or something like this is just cheesy siding. You would really put up the, you know, siding that's rated so it won't, you know, give way under pressure. Oh, and there's also different size nails. So for this kind, in the directions it says you can use, I forget what diameter nail, if there's not much wind or anything in the area. But if there is wind, then you should use a size up nail. So I mean, even for just shed stuff, there's different kinds of nails you should use. Like if this was a house, I mean, you'd put up your sheathing just with regular framing nails. I think they're 0.113, but anyways, that's what you'd use for sheathing, is just, you know, regular framing nails. This is what I'm using for, I got my framing nails. Here's my kind of nails I'm using for the siding. The one thing bad about those ring shank nails, if you set a nail in and it doesn't go all the way in and goes wacky and you need to pull it out, you can't pull out those nails. Those ring shank nails just tear up everything. So I found the best thing to do, if you get a nail out of the way, just keep bending it till it breaks off, and then put a little caulking over that or putty to cover it up. But you know, trying to pull out these, it usually just kind of rips a lot of your siding up. This is my first piece I got up here. You can see I got it set on that, and one clamp holding it in, and that does pretty well. All I'm doing now is I'm kind of moving this around to see where I want this seam to go. So you can see they've got this line. The next panel is going to go to here, and then I'll probably nail like right there. So I know I need to cut off a little bit of this end here, which isn't much, you know. So I'm going to cut off a piece, the first piece, just a little bit, so everything's lined up and ready to go. And this is how I'm cutting these panels. Long ways, I just, you know, pull this sheet over so I don't cut the ones on the bottom, and then I'm using my chalk line there. Just make a long chalk line, and using my saw, this line really doesn't need to be that straight or perfect, because once you put it on that corner, you're going to eventually cover that up with trim. So it really doesn't matter at all. Sweet, so the siding is all done now. You know, a couple things, like when you're cutting around these windows and stuff, I just go inside, use a drill bit on the four corners, and then draw a line, and then use my saber saw. It seems to work well, and you don't really need to get that close, because you should have, you know, 1/2 inch all around as like spare room, you know, for your roughing space. And that first piece over there, I had to cut the end on to start, but the rest of these 3 corners, I didn't cut at all. I just slapped them up there, and they fit into place pretty well. One thing is too, with you know, the good thing about having 16 inch studs on center is when you're throwing up these sheets, then it's easy to know where the studs are. So usually about every 6 inches around the edges, you put nails, and then you come over just two things right here, and here's where your stud is. And then again, you go over 2, and this is where your stud is, and then over 2 more, and this is where your edge is. So it just makes everything really easy. And if you can imagine you had 2-foot spacing, you would only have 1 2x4 in the middle here to nail to. So to me, that just seems kind of a little thin on the studs. So I always go with 16s. Oh, and when I'm putting these holders down in here to hold this up, I try to get the top not lined up perfectly, just like a little bit lower than the top, because when you put your rafters up there, they're going to sit flat on that top plate, and so you don't want your siding kind of bumping up, and then you'll have to kind of trim off those pieces so your rafters will sit right. So anyways, I go down a little bit from the top. So I never actually read this writing before, but I'm looking at it, and it actually says right on it that, I mean, it's rated siding sheathing 3/8 category. 3/8 is kind of, you usually need 1/2 inch sheathing for like houses and stuff. That's kind of a minimum. So this is like for sheds, and it says right on it 16 OC on center. So you're supposed to have these studs really 16 inches on center. So I don't know what's up with the 2-foot spacing on studs sometimes. Hey, and to finish up on this siding stuff, I just wanted to tell you of a problem I had, a mistake I made, so you don't make the same mistake. So I did change the pattern of studs here because there was a 2-foot piece there. And so when I was telling you, you can always nail in kind of a set location, that's for most of the place. except for this section of the side wall. And so I came along and I was looking today, I was like, wow, I missed that stud totally. So I should have put that stud right there to be even with that. And this one I totally missed. Look at that. I got all kinds of these nails, so I have to pop out those nails and now caulk the outside where that happened. I also know when I was putting up the siding, the first piece, I needed an extra block right here. So whenever you're doing this sidewall over here, you know, you can always look at the top with the ladder and make sure you got your stud where you think it is. Another problem, it rained. I took a few days off, had some fun, and but it rained, and I did want to tell you, like, you should really cover up your OSB whenever it's going to rain, because the stuff looks horrible once it gets wet. So remember, I was doing my floor, and I don't oversink anything, and I had to go hammer nails in, so I know every nail in this floor, none of them were overdriven. But now, after it rained, I want to show you like what the difference is. But now I don't know if you can really see these, but wow, like that one's like way in deep. I mean, most of these are, some of these you can't even see anymore because they've kind of, it looks like, you know, all the wood is swelled around it. And over here where, I mean, this piece was a cut piece, and it isn't spray painted on the end like this one. So this one swelled a lot higher, and now this piece is higher up. So when you went to go to put a floor on, you'd have to sand this down. But look at that nail, is like super far in there. So the moral of the story is to cover this stuff up when it's going to rain. You know, once this floor swells too, it really never goes unswells, shrinks back down. It's kind of the way it is. And once I start walking on it now, you can hear all kinds of creaks and stuff in my floor. And so even if you screwed it down, I mean, if it rained, you probably have to go back, put some more screws in it. So keep it dry.